This episode is brought to you by Netflix. This Monday night, witness the end of an era. John Cena takes center stage for his final appearance ever on Monday Night Raw. One last match, one unforgettable farewell. Come celebrate the legacy of a true WWE legend. Monday Night Raw, November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix. Be there for the moment everyone will be talking about.
Find the biggest voices in sports on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees, where kids get to learn about their favourite players, teams, trophies and more. The podcast where kids are inspired, educated and motivated through the thing which they love. Search Football for Kids and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Sports Social Podcast Network, the biggest voices in sport. Let's take a look at some of the lineup. The England pod.
If he plays regular minutes this season for Manchester City, he will re-emerge as one of the best players that we've got.
The final word.
Not sure whether stress fractures were a thing in the mid-70s in the same way that nobody ate avocados until 2005.
Let's be having you.
I love the fact that he's chosen that moment to go, do you know what? Now I'm going to do it.
All on Europe's biggest sport podcast network. Find your next favourite sport podcast. Search Sports Social Podcast Network and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Verified comparison at content.sport-social.co.uk/comparison.
Welcome to Away the Podcast. It's Martin here and joining us today for part 2 of our Q&A pod as we sit down in an attempt to answer the questions you lovely lot have sent in for us to answer. And it's always great to hear from you, so thanks very much for all of the questions. We do try to get through them all. And remember, if you'd like to get involved, look out for the posts on X or email us at howaythepodcast@safc@gmail.com with your questions. And of course, we've got our regular question answerers with us today. First of all, it's Ant Waterson. Hello, mate.
How are you, mate? All good here. Just literally laughing off on screen here, looking at Andrew running down the wing like a seasoned winger there, trying to get his headphones back on. But yeah, all good, mate. Are you?
Excellent. Yeah, it was a good turn of pace. Quite impressive, Andrew.
It was.
What's not so impressive is for the next few minutes, you're just going to hear me trying to get some air back into my lungs. I hope you didn't hear my conversation with my daughter there. I don't know if that got picked up, but I do apologise. I'm now sat down and ready to talk about Sunderland again.
Excellent. Good man. Now we have got a load of questions to answer we didn't get through the other day. And the first one, Ant, is from @Elliot, lots of numbers, and also John Wade @the Wadies has kind of talked about a similar topic. And you alluded to it at the end of the last pod that we did with the prospect of Noah Sadiki and Granit Xhaka facing a suspension. Now, look, the reality is both of them will be suspended for a game relatively soon. You'd imagine both are on 4 yellow cards. And Elliot says, with Sadiki and Xhaka both on 4 yellows, what do we do? The derby is only a matter of weeks away, so do we deliberately allow them to get one each in different games? Or is it a case of being inevitable? And John Wade says, the yellow card situation worries me a bit. Are we agreed that Xhaka and Sadiki can miss Bournemouth if they get booked on purpose versus Fulham? Now, you might kind of laugh and smile at this, but I think this is something that the club, if you look at the advertising hoardings crack on Saturday, right? Lebris after the match is going, we are looking at every single detail to try to make sure that we have got an advantage. He will not want those two suspended for the same game. He will not want either of them missing from the derby match. So we can kind of put that as a known, I was going to say, it's not a fact because we're kind of guessing what Lebris is thinking, but in all reality, he's going to be thinking along those lines, right? So what do we do? And what would you do?
I would let them both play their natural game, to be honest. Because I've got to be honest, I think everyone's looking at Newcastle game, aren't they? We've got 4 games to go before then. I am fairly confident that Xhaka and Sadiki will both have served a suspension by then. Because just it's the way they play. It's the way, especially with Granit Xhaka, it's the way Granit Xhaka plays, like to get stuck in everything like that. And Noah Sadiki, I don't think Noah Sadiki's I was surprised he was on full. I've got to be honest. I thought it was his second when we played Everton. And then people saying, "Oh, I think it's his fifth." It's like, was it? It's like I just can't remember him getting any yellow cards. I can't remember being a particularly blood and thunder tackle player. But he does. The one against Everton was just more out of anger that he never got a free kick. Honest, it was a little bit a little bit silly. But I'm just I think the both you kind of tell them both, look, try and ease off for the derby because it's not in them, and I don't want us to, kind of make players do things that, it stops them from playing their natural game. Say if you say to Xhaka, "Oh, Granit, don't go in on, don't try and put this tackle because Newcastle's around the corner," and he kind of eases up, which you won't do anyway, but he eases off a tackle that leads to a goal or something. You think, "Oh, what's he doing there?" Let them play the natural games. Let them, pick up a yellow card or whatever. Yes, having both against Newcastle would be a massive issue. I just don't see. I think there's too many games beforehand that they'll both miss. I think, if one picks up one against Fulham, they miss a Bournemouth. The other one, say, picks up one Bournemouth or Liverpool, whatever, they miss City or Liverpool. I think it'll be all right anyway. But I definitely don't make them do anything different. And if anything happens, if we're playing, say if it comes to the fact that we've got City away before we play Newcastle and they're both still on the yellow cards, there's a possibility he'd probably play different too, I think, because he'd be thinking about that derby game, won't he? So I don't know. I just don't want them thinking, well, I can't get a yellow card because it's a natural game. You can't tell someone not to do that.
So, Andrew, Ant said there, you can't tell them not to get a yellow card, which I agree with because you want them to play the natural game. You can embrace the Jose Mourinho approach and tell them to get a yellow card. Now, last minute against Fulham, neither of them have a yellow. A little shirt pull from Sadiki sits out Bournemouth. Xhaka does the same against Bournemouth, sits out Liverpool. Now, do we think that'll come into the equation, or do we think we'll just let things play out and que sera?
I think it'll be the latter. I'm going to dive into my big book of football cliches here. I think you need to take each game as it comes, treat it as its own match, and you also need to remember that I realise as I say this is hypocritical because there is a lot riding on a derby game, even more so now given the different ways the clubs are doing things. But it is only 3 points up for grabs against the Mags. I mean, let's face it, if we beat the Mags or we lose to the Mags, that's not the end of the rivalry. You don't just shake hands and say, well, that's the end of it. We've now decided which team's the better one. And forevermore, we'll not take the mick out of yous at work or what have you. So it would be foolish to play a couple of games at, 75, 80%. Because in a few weeks down the line, there might be a game where in an ideal world you want your strong side. So the club will be aware of who's on what in terms of suspensions. I'm clearly not, because I spent the whole second half against Arsenal saying, oh, Xhaka's out now against Fulham. I don't know why, but I'd already decided he was now getting suspended. So any poor soul who had to sit near me on Sunday evening will be thinking, oh, Xhaka's already out. The club will be aware and they might want to bear it in mind, but I think it's a dangerous game to be in when you start thinking too far ahead of yourselves.
I'll put my neck on the line here. I think both of them, if they don't get a yellow card against Fulham or Bournemouth, or towards the end of the Bournemouth game, I reckon one of them will pick up a really soft booking. And I don't think they'll say to them go out and play a little bit reserved or hold back from tackles or anything like that. I think they'll be looking at that run of fixtures, and the Liverpool game's midweek as well. in between 2 Saturday games, which is unusual for our fixtures this season. And I think they might go, you know what, if one of yous misses a Liverpool game, one of yous misses Man City, we'll work that out, and then you'll come back and fire in all cylinders.
Could I just say, if you do want to pick up a daft booking, now is the time, because I don't know if it's just me being a bit one-eyed about Sunderland. The refereeing's been shocking the last couple of games, lads.
Oh,
I just can't. I think it's been dreadful. So yeah, I think if you want to pick yourself up a booking, it's going to be pretty easy to do.
You know what's funny? Like we did the podcast with Jason from the Echo. Gav and I did after the Everton game, and Gav was fuming about the referee. And I actually thought the referee was almost a victim of his own approach to the game. I don't think he was necessarily bad in terms of the decisions he made, but he was trying to let the game flow, and then as a consequence of that, he let things like the Sadiki incident happen because he had a very high bar for fouls. I thought Pawson on Saturday was horrendous. I thought he was absolutely awful. But you look on social media, the Arsenal fans thought he was awful for them as well. So he was either just really crap across the board, or we've got it wrong or whatever. But I just thought he was atrocious on Saturday.
Yeah. He fell into a very clever trap, didn't he? That Arsenal set was, especially in the second half, we're going to just shout for everything, and he fell for it.
He did.
I do appreciate it's difficult to be a referee, and or again, the cliches, they only get one chance to see an incident, and as fans we'll see things differently, and we'll give more of a weighting to Sunderland in a 50-50 challenge or whatever. But he was making some pretty basic errors, and things that in my mind are black and white issues, like when to play advantage. He was just getting horrifically wrong. We had one where we won the ball. It was in our defensive third, but we, all 11 men, were stood up and facing the right way, whereas Arsenal, I think, had one or two bodies on the ground. We were breaking. We had all the momentum behind us, and he blows it up to give us the free kick, allowing Arsenal to reset. You just think that's not a case of you didn't quite get the best view of it, or it was a decision that could have gone either way. That you should be able to implement that regardless of the circumstances.
I tell you what, I know we're going off on a tangent here with referees, but one thing that's really puzzled me this season has been the quickness that the referees are calling physios on. The referees are deciding really quickly to call a physio on if a player's down. Now, in a few occasions, we've suffered from it, and the opposition's had it as well. The player hasn't asked for help, but the referee's decided the physio comes on. But then the player has to go off for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Which, that's the referee's decided to do that. The captain hasn't asked for it. The player hasn't asked for it. And I think that is so wrong and actually open to manipulation, potentially. And I think we've seen it increasingly over the last few games. And there was one who came on on Saturday. One of our players went off injured because of that. It was a Ballard.
I think it was Mukiele.
It was Mukiele.
Was it? Yeah.
So I was watching the clock, and he had opportunity to let him come back on 28 seconds, 29 seconds, 30 seconds. He didn't, in case the game kind of went back over to where Mukiele was going to come on. Eventually, it got to about 45 seconds, and he must have just thought, I've got to let him back on. And that whoever the Arsenal player was, it might have been Declan Rice who had the ball, didn't realise that Mukiele was coming on the pitch, and he won the ball, didn't he? But it's a ridiculous rule.
Yeah. You would have thought as well, that Mukiele one, that he was very seriously injured. The way the referee ran over to him straight away, called the physio and everything like that. You thought, he's done. I remember thinking, he's done his knee or something here, like, he's like really badly hurt. And he was all right, but he was fine.
But that rule was brought in to stop players milking time. So if they're asking for a physio to come on, fair enough, get them off the field for 30 seconds. It's their decision. And I think there's a sort of a get-out thing. If the opposition player's been yellow carded, then you don't have to go off the pitch. But referees are now deciding to bring the physios on to send players off for, up to a minute on some occasions, and it's wrong.
I hadn't realised that he was off the pitch for that long, Martin. That's poor, really. And should the fourth official not be looking at the time? Because you want the referee focusing on the flow of the game, not checking his watch every 5-10 seconds to see if he can signal a player on.
I think
I hadn't realised that.
I think the player's supposed to not. The player's not supposed to be allowed on if the ball's in the vicinity of the player.
Okay.
So to avoid things like we saw on Saturday, but I think the referee had actually passed up a few opportunities to let him back on. When the ball, he kind of got to the point where he's going, I've got to let this lad back on because it's knocking on to a minute.
Mhm.
But, if you're without a player for a minute, the defence has to reorganise. The team structure has to reorganise. All that sort. I just think it's. Anyway,
I've never understood it. I've never really understood it anyway. Fair enough if, back in the day when, if you needed a bit more extra treatment, you went off on the sidelines, didn't you? And you got a little bit extra treatment and stuff. But why you have to, why it's just all of a sudden 30 seconds. You've been injured or something, or you've got fair enough if you've had a head injury and, you go off, they do a concussion test or whatever. Or, you just need a little bit extra time just to, hobble back on or whatever. I just don't understand. See, you've took a little knocker to a dead leg or something. The physio comes on and do the spray. You're up, you're about, right, fair enough, I can play on. Why you have to go off for 30 seconds?
Well,
it baffles us.
It's just supposed to be a deterrent to stop players getting up more time by calling the physio on unnecessarily. But I tell you what will solve all of it. If they adopt the rugby league thing, just let the physios come on and play around them.
Yeah.
But seriously, if it can work in a game like rugby league, it can work in football.
Yeah. I think this is, again, we're perhaps moving away from some of the questions we've got lined up, but it does seem that there's certain things that the game seems just so implausible, they're just unopen to change. Because, rugby league, maybe you make it so that if the player's in the 18-yard box, you can't do that because it might cause an issue. But football does need to be a bit more flexible in the way it looks to deal with certain issues. And we do need to move with the times. And Martin, put you in charge for my mind, mate, because physios coming onto the pitch, and if it's in a fairly innocuous part of the field, I think everybody wins from that scenario.
No, that's right. Like head injuries, serious injuries, the referee can make a call whether to stop the game or not. If it's something relatively minor, let the physio go on. The players will soon bloody get up if the game's still going on around them. The team will be encouraged to get up. But anyway, we're kind of setting our own questions here, and that is not the point of this podcast. Unsurprisingly, AFCON, the looming issue of AFCON, has risen its head again. So at Michael_Bird says, is AFCON really going to be that much of an issue? Out the starting 11 yesterday, there's only 2 from that we'd lose. At Billy Blythe asks, with AFCON looming, is Hume going to go to left back? Assume Mukiele right back with Alderete and Ballard centre halves, obviously injury and form permitting. Now, on our website, I know there's all this assumption about all these players going to AFCON and all that sort of stuff. On our website a month or so ago, Lee Morrison did a good piece, which I've dug out, and it's kind of got everything broken down. So we've got 7 players who can potentially get called up. But, we're not by the only means the only club who are going to have this issue. Forest have 6 and Wolves have 5, for example. So we're not the only club in the Premier League who's going to lose a few players, and the others are all going to be fine. You've got Simon Dingra with the Ivory Coast, Habib Diarra, and there must be a question mark over Diarra's involvement given his injury, so we'll have to see how that one plays out, but he should be in the Senegal squad. Ronaldo should be with Mozambique. We've got Noah Sadiki and Arthur Masuaku with Congo, and Bertrand Traore with Burkina Faso, and Chemsdeen Talbi potentially with Morocco. Now, the Cup of Nations takes place from the 21st of December to the 18th of January, and you've got players probably going a week before that to join up with training camps and all that sort of stuff. Now, the likelihood is that when you dig into it, Mozambique have rarely got out the group stages, and those group games are within a week of each other. So our fixtures there, we've got Brighton away, Leeds at home, Man City at home, Spurs away on the 2nd of January, I believe, Brentford away, and Palace at home. So those are the fixtures that can potentially be affected. But the likelihood is we'll have different players sort of coming back at different stages. And obviously we've got the FA Cup to chuck into the mix there as well. So how big an issue, Andrew, do you think this is going to be for us?
I'm not too concerned. I said right from the start when we were signing lots of players with the potential to be picked up for AFCON, the club hadn't just overlooked it. They were aware. They must have known AFCON was on and had taken a gamble to think, well, it's still worth bringing these players in. You've gone through the players there. You're right. There's only 2 of them are currently regular first team starters. Serkin played on Friday night for the under-21s. So we assume Ronaldo's going. He's probably not going to be away that long anyway, but we're going to potentially have backup ready to go by that point anyway. I heard Nick Barnes say recently that some players have already stated a preference to stay on Wearside for as long as possible. You know, I think some nations are allowed to call up their players a couple of weeks in advance of the tournament, but our lot have already said, well, I'd like to stay with Sunderland for as long as possible. So that'll reduce the time they're away. It also shows that they're enjoying being at Sunderland. You know, it's a difficult position for some of these players to be in because obviously they're very proud to represent their country, but they do want to be part of Sunderland as well. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue. Other clubs have got players away, as you've read out there. In my mind, my attitude, whenever anything like this happens is, well, if somebody's going to be out of the team for whatever reason, it's up to the lads on the fringes who are then going to be selected to say, right, this is my chance. I'm going to play so well that when Ronaldo gets back, whenever that is, he doesn't get a look in anyway because I've made the spot my own. That's the way it needs to be.
And it's going to be an interesting thing to for the club to deal with, isn't it? And you know, when you kind of dig into the AFCON taking place this year, there was all sorts of things. The date was moved. It had been agreed to be played in the summer, but then it clashed with the Club World Cup, so they had to change it again. And you had all this stuff going on. When you look at the actual players who are going to leave to go and join up with their squads, you know, obviously Sadiki's going to be a massive miss. But, you know, we showed through that suspension that we could cope with without Ronaldo for a few games. Mm-hmm. You know, Adingra's struggled to get into the team. Diarra's been injured. Masuaku hasn't pulled up any trees when he's been given a chance. Traore is actually kind of coming into his own a little bit. I thought he did well again on Saturday, but he's a relatively new introduction to the team, so it's not as if you kind of got a key player there. And I don't think he's fully hit the straps. Talby is obviously a very good player from what he's been shown, but he's not a regular first team starter. You got, as Andrew says, you got Serkin coming back into fitness. Romain Mundell's training again. You've got Dan Neil chomping at the bit to get a chance. Luke O'Nien will be desperate for a chance. What do you think we'll do?
Do you know what it is? You know, had we picked up, you know, teams are going to pick up injuries. Had these players all been missing due to injury and all that stuff, we would have found a way anyway. We're going to find a way, and it's not as if, you know, and this is where it's gone. It's happened from the start of the season where everybody, oh, wait, come January, we're not going to have any players left. It's not as if all these players are going to join the same country who's guaranteed to get into the final. Yeah, it's like if we're really unfortunate, we're going to have like players, 4 players into the last semi-finals, final, or whatever. So I'd imagine Senegal will go all the way and probably win it the way it's going. Maybe them or Egypt and stuff. But it's like, okay, but deal with it. You know, it happens twice. You know, once every 2 years. Teams deal with it, and we'll find a way. You know, the only kind of downside to me is we're losing 3 wingers. You know, like obviously Traore, Adingra, and Talby. if Talby gets picked, because Talby's in and out the Morocco team, and that's a little bit where we're a bit short there. We've got like Mundle. If fingers crossed Mundle's fit by then, I think he's due back soon. And fingers crossed he hasn't picked another injury or something like that. But there's a Eliza Mayenda who I think's gone a little bit unnoticed. That this is a lad who nearly got us here. Pretty much got the equaliser against Sheffield Wednesday, scored against Coventry, scored our first goal this season. He can play out on the wide right. So there we go. You'd imagine Mayenda could do a job. It doesn't worry us as much as I think it should. No, in fact, actually go back to it shouldn't worry us as much as I think people are worried about. Like I was talking to a lad yesterday at the women's game, and he said, I'm still worried about January. January could be bad. I was like, look where we are in the league. What are you worried about it for? We've managed to pick up results without, you mentioned Ronaldo. I think Ronaldo's a fantastic footballer. But we didn't really miss it, did we? You were thinking, we'd have picked a result if Ronaldo had been fit. We've missed Dan Ballard for certain periods of the season. We've just literally answered the question that there's a game where we're going to have to be without Granit Xhaka. There's going to be a game where we're going to be without Noah Sadiki. But you've got players who are on the bench who are chomping at the bit. You mentioned Dan Neil. Dan Neil has barely played this season, and he'll be wanting to prove himself just to him and any team or to Sunderland or whatever, or any team that he could be going to, that he's a good footballer and belongs in the Premier League. We've got like Gertruda who can play there anyway, so we're fine. We'll be fine. And it, like I say, it's not as if we're losing them for 6 months. It's 3 weeks of a season where you put an FA Cup game in the middle of it anywhere. We're going to play probably a squad team. Say a weekend side, I don't think there's such thing, but like a squad players and stuff like that. And you look at as well, the transfer window opens in January, and I think we'll get our business done quite quickly because that's what they seem to be doing. So I'm not worried at all, to be honest.
I think, Ant, that's exactly right. Rather than what's the worst that can happen and see it as a negative thing, see it exactly how you are, is, well, it doesn't need to be as bad as some people are making out. I mean, players want to play for their country, so there might be one or two of them who come back and are in even better form because they've been part of their national team and they've maybe done better in the tournament than they thought they would. You said there Senegal might go and win it. Well, if Senegal do win it, you've then got a player coming back who'll be absolutely buzzing because he's just won a major tournament with his country. So it doesn't have to be a negative situation. And also, as I'm looking at the table right now, like you've said, we've picked up enough points already. We're on 19 points now. I think it was 2002, 2003. We only got 19 points all season. So, we can afford to have one or two games where we're having to change things up. And as I say, that's then just an opportunity for those other players to say, right, well, this is now my place anyway. So, sorry, boys, take as long as you want with your national team because I'm now in the Sunderland side.
So, I think that's the thing, just to kind of jump in at that point, because you've got, first of all, you've got players like Adingra, right? As we talked about, I think, in the previous pod, he hasn't had a great deal of a chance in the last, 6 weeks or so. He's been kind of on the bench around the team. He came on sub, obviously, against Arsenal on Saturday. But for him to go off and play lots of football, be part of a winning side, we benefit from him coming back in that form. Talby, if he does go, you kind of hope, I say, he's kind of on the fringes of that squad, and he might not go, and it'll be good for us if he doesn't go in the short term. But if he goes and plays a starring role, come back full of confidence, see, that same thing applies to all of the players who are going to go. Then you've got the other bit, as Andrew said, with people like Dan Neil, people like Chris Rigg, people like Dennis Serkin. They will be itching to get that chance, and they will not want to give up that opportunity. No. You got even further forward. You talk about Mayenda going on the right, Isidore potentially on the left, Broby up front. They're not going to want to give up their places if they get a chance. So I'm choosing to kind of look on the positive side of this, the challenge that it brings. And you know what the manager's like as well. He will be desperate to get stuck into that period because it's a different challenge for him and it's a different opportunity. And he loves being given that task of trying to solve a different challenge. Yeah. And, it's a good place to be in if the club's players are getting called up for bloody international tournaments. It shows that we've got a decent squad, and we're in a good place with the players in the club.
Plus, as well, mate, you're looking at like how well the 23s are doing at the minute, and there's some players in there. We mentioned Harrison Jones quite a lot, who's probably he's been on the bench a couple of times for us this season, hasn't he? And he's a good player, Harrison Jones. I quite like him, and the young Finn, the Armenian lads. At some point he's going to get picked for the first team, and it'll be a great opportunity to give these lads, a chance on the bench or whatever when these players are gone. But you look at our bench on Saturday, I mean, it's so full of depth. You've got like Adringa, Brobby, Masuaku, Mayenda, Neil, Luke O'Nien, Chris Rigg, Talby, and Anthony Patterson. I mean, that shows how deep we are. That's a strong bench, that, isn't it? Like, we're not like there's no bar Rigg, there's no child on the bench, you know what I mean? And you look at like the Arsenal bench, they had 3 teenagers on the bench who hadn't played a first team game. So, it happens to every team in this Premier League and in the country. Teams get injuries, teams get suspensions, teams get players going off on international breaks. Right, it happens, deal with it.
As we say as well, Wolves are going to lose players, Forest are going to lose players, other clubs will lose players. You talk about
Liverpool's losing one of the best players in the world. You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. And you talk about Chris Rigg, saying, he's the only, in inverted commas, kid that we've got on the bench. This is a kid who's played, 79, 80 games for Sunderland. He's not a kid in experience terms. He can, the manager's already showed the season he's happy to chuck him in. He can go on the right, he can go in that advanced midfield role, and he can do a good job, and he'll have no qualms about chucking these players in. And
Martin, that bench as well. I'm sorry to interrupt again. That bench as well doesn't include Romeo Mundell, who will be amongst it when he's back.
Yeah.
Dennis Serkin, who you would argue maybe the one where you're thinking, we're not sure about. And also a player who we spent 37 million quid on.
It's not a bad spot to be in, really, is it?
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like Football Clichés with Adam Hurrey, Charlie Eccleshare and me, David Walker. It's a truly unique podcast all about the language of football, the words, the phrases and all the tiny things you didn't think you cared about until now. Search Football Clichés and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Mike's down, suited up. The Football Content Awards are back for 2025 and you can be there. Join Sports Social Podcast Network and a host of your favourite content creators at Elland Road, home of Leeds United, on Thursday 20th of November. We'll be celebrating the podcasters, YouTubers, clubs, brands, journalists and players who make football media what it is. You'll get a 2-course meal, a welcome drink, live entertainment and an after party that doesn't end at full time. Plus, you'd have to be a finalist to attend. Just someone who loves the beautiful game and the stories around it. Grab your tickets now on Eventbrite. Just search Football Content Awards 2025.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like Big Kick Energy with me, Maisie Adam.
And me, Susie Ruffle.
Each week we bring you the latest from the world of women's football. Whether you're a lifelong fan like me,
or a newer fan like me and have recently got swept up in the Lioness excitement,
we've got everything you need to know about the women's game.
Search Big Kick Energy and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
And you kind of led us into transfer talk there, Ant. So at RYXCL01 says, with Kirill saying we'll get more in the January transfer window, is there any positions that you want more depth at? And if so, who would you recommend, Andrew, putting on your scouting hat for a moment? Maybe talk about positions rather than...
I'm so glad you're getting to answer this question first.
Yeah. I mean, usually when Sunderland sign a player, you've never even heard of them.
Yeah.
And then you do the digging and you think, oh, yeah, I can see why we've gone for him. Now, I'll let you into a little secret. I don't have access to the same databases as the club do. I'm not even on Football Manager these days. So, yeah, I think I will just stick with positions. And it probably is on the wings. And quite rightly said, that is an area of the pitch where we might lose one or two for AFCON. And if that's a position where you could be weak for AFCON, that's also a position you could be weak just for other footballing reasons. You could easily pick up a couple of injuries and then be down to low numbers. So yeah, the club over the summer looked as if they wanted to strengthen that position. I would imagine they still want to do that, because elsewhere, I don't know how you do improve on what we've got without seriously upsetting the balance of the group anyway. There's strength and depth. I was really excited by what Kira Louis-Dreyfus said prior to Everton, the Everton game on TV. The club are obviously looking ahead and trying to work out how they want to do things in January. I just suspect that if we do sign players, it'll be with an eye to bedding them in rather than them being dropped into the starting 11 straight away.
Yeah. Now, and sort of following on from that, Paul Russell at Paul_Russ 2012 talks about AFCON, as we discussed, but says our attack and left side defence during that period will look very different. Can you see us signing a winger in the first week of the transfer window, or will we ride it out? And at Rob Lowe 23 says 7th place, probably you end up top goal scorer. We can talk about those bits if we want to in a sec. But Labrissa says we need a new winger, and you are the recruitment team. Who would you like to sign and why? Now, we did laugh at Andrew for getting first go of that question earlier, so
God
that one's right at you.
Oh God, I don't know.
Whilst Ant thinks, shall I just buy him some thinking time and say, thank you very much, Martin, mate. You've done me a real favour there.
Again, I'm not a football scout. I'm not on FM. I'll try to ride it.
Here's a question: like, what if you're going to look at global football, right? What style of player? See if you agree that we would potentially invest in a new winger, and I think the signing of Traore on deadline day for the fee that we paid from a 1-year contract suggests that he wanted a new winger for the right hand side to compete with the players who we've got in the squad. Traore is probably not going to be the long-term solution there. And if a certain type of player becomes available for that position, we'll probably move for them in January if we can get them. If not, it'll be the summer. We've seen that the club will keep the powder dry if they can't get the right player in. If you can kind of look around at football, not necessarily saying we would sign Lionel Messi or we would sign somebody else, but in terms of style of player, who do you look at other clubs and go, you know what, that's a cracking winger who would do well in our team, or that's a great addition. That style of player would be a good addition to the squad.
Well, I will throw a name into the mix because just for the fact he's been seen at his tin right a few times. Osman Dembele, there we go. But do you know what I think? You know, like, and I agree with I think the right hand side will be somewhere where he does look at in January. Even though, as we said, again, I think we're all three of us are on the Traore bandwagon, where I think he's actually been all right for us. I don't get this whole against Traore stuff. I think Everton, it was excellent, to be fair, and I thought again on Saturday against Arsenal, his graft is tremendous, and that's why he's in the side for. But I think what you're looking at, probably a young, dynamic winger who gets goals, like someone who's like literally like a bit like Talby, like properly rapid, who gets a few goals, plugs in with a few goals, something like that. I think maybe like a Mitoma maybe from Brighton, who likes to really take on players, doesn't he? Likes to run past players with the ball and stuff like that. I think would be an ideal sign. I'm not saying go outside Cameron Mitoma, but something like that where he can take on players, he can get a lot of assists, get a lot of goals as well. I think something along those lines, and that make us a complete entity, I think. Then
it's all right. You've said that we're going to sign Dembele, so that's fine.
Yeah. Bookmark it. I mean, but when you look at like that with that stuff that was said on Monday, and you thinking now, who if and this is like probably a question for everyone really, when you look at that statement and stuff like that, and you look at the side we've already got, if they're going to bring somebody in who's saying we want them to be ready to play first team 11, I mean, this is going to be a world-class footballer. You know what I mean? Because the side that we've got already is fantastic anyway. So, like, if he's bringing someone in who he's immediately coming to the first team, he's going to be this, going to be that. I mean, it's a big, big signing, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. It's got to be. It's, and, as Andrew says before, how do you improve the team? You can only improve what we've got now by signing players who are a level above what we've got. And that level's getting higher and higher and higher.
Exactly. Dembele.
Well, hey, you know what? And people will think I'm daft. Purely because of the relationship he's got with Kira Louis-Dreyfus, I think that'll happen, or a rumour of it'll happen at some point in the next. It might not be in the next couple of seasons, but if we continue going the way we are, that's something I can see happening. It might be for a short spell, it might be for a loan, whatever it is. But I'm not ruling that one out, I have to say.
Martin, a few months ago, I said I wouldn't be surprised if Sunderland ended up qualifying for Europe twice in one season by winning the FA Cup and finishing high up enough in the league. And I thought, I might be overextending a bit there, but you've blown that out the water with that one. It would be lovely. It would be lovely to see, wouldn't it? And listen, with Sunderland, I mean, we pulled off the Granit Xhaka signing that a load of people said wouldn't happen. So you should never not expect the unexpected with Sunderland. So, Martin, congratulations. You started that rumour, and when it pays off, I hope everybody gives you your dues.
Everyone can buy us a pint. There we go.
Yeah.
Rob's comment about Broby ending up top scorer. I think there's a really, really good player in there, and I think he adds something an awful lot different to the team than the other strikers who we've played up front do. And you saw even in that sort of little cameo he played on Saturday, his ability to hold the ball up, link play, out-muscle defenders, get on the end with that finish. He showed a real goal scorer's instinct to get that goal. And I think if we can get him in the team somehow, he adds a completely different dimension to the squad. And whether that chance comes in the next few weeks, whether it comes during AFCON, we'll have to wait and see. But I think getting him into the side could be a really interesting thing, Andrew, to see how he actually does and what else he brings. Because I think he's another one who's, he had a bit of harsh criticism, really unfair criticism after a couple of early appearances. I think he looks a bloody good player.
Oh yeah, the strength shown against Arsenal there was phenomenal. I was speaking to somebody at half time who lives in the Netherlands, and he was saying to me he knows a lot of Ajax fans who were over the moon to be getting rid of him. Well, this is what Sunderland's all about. Getting a player in who's maybe their career's not going the way they want it to, and rehabilitating them and making them feel loved. And yeah, you can very easily see a situation where he's starting games for us because he offers a slightly different type of skill set to Isidore. He's got phenomenal power. He's quite intelligent as well. You know, there was all this daftness about, he's a donkey and he's Jose Altidore Mark II and all of this. Well, he's clearly not. He's smart. The way he held that ball up against Chelsea and just bided his time and showed confidence in his ability instead of panicking. That's a player who's got something about them. So, yeah, we haven't just signed him on a whim. We've looked at him for some time. We've spent pretty considerable money on him. So the plan has to be that he'll be starting games for us. And yeah, Isidore's doing a great job for us. But if the situation calls for it, I'd have no concerns putting Broby in at the moment.
Absolutely not. We're going to finish off with another couple of questions about transfers, Ant. And
wonderful.
Well, this is retrospective rather than looking at the future, so we've got a chance. Chris Dixon had emailed us for the last pod, but his email just came through after we'd finished recording. But he said, do you have any idea, which summer signings were already on our radar before the arrival of Gisolfi, and which players were bought because of his connections? Now, obviously, we don't have any insight into the workings of the club and all that sort of stuff, but I do know that we tried to get Noah Sadiki last season,
We did.
in the Championship. So he was obviously on the club's radar. Now, I do believe that there was a couple of obviously signings that Giusolfi had kind of introduced to the club. I think it was kind of telling that he went over and had all the pictures done with Ronaldo in Spain when that signing was done and all that sort of stuff. But I think you kind of take that question to a slightly broader point, can't you? And just talk about like, his arrival at the start of the summer marked a real step change in how we were kind of thinking about what we do. And I remember, Andrew, you and Gav did a pod as soon as that news broke, and you're going, shit, we mean business here. This is a serious statement of intent. And obviously we've seen Stuart Harvey depart the club and all that sort of stuff subsequently. But that moment, and you look back on the summer, that's a massive moment in the club's sort of revolution, if you like, if you're going to quote Alan Partridge.
Well done. No, I think maybe he's had to do with one or two, possibly the Broby one as well. Totally agree with Andrew, by the way, regarding Broby. I think you're going to see him starting sooner rather than later, and it gives us, especially with the African Cup of Nations coming up, it gives us that chance to play Mayenda Isidore different ways. But and also those who were giving him stick for like a couple of errors early on in his career. How do you feel now? Pretty shit, didn't you? Pretty stupid. Yeah, but
there's a big point there, right? There's been numerous lessons over the past few seasons in the virtue of patience.
Exactly. And honestly, I would have gone on a rant about that because it's just daft. You can't. A few of my mates just like write people off so quickly, and it's like, oh man, give them a chance. I can remember actually, and this is quite funny. So we were playing. I can't remember who we were playing last year. It was when Mundell scored. Anyway, when Jack Clark had just left, and I was sitting with a couple of lads around us, and one of them like, I don't think Mundell's the answer. Literally about a minute later, he scored. It was Burnley, and I was like, how do you feel now, mate? Honestly, it's like you just got to give players time. Like I think people are writing a dringer off and all that. It's like he'll come good. He will come good. His time will come. It'll happen. It'll happen across the season. It's good. It will happen. But anyway, on about the Giusolfi stuff, I think you're looking at his influence. Maybe not even in January. I think it'll be next season, the season after, where we'll start to build his kind of knowledge and stuff like that. And he's got a few contacts and stuff. I think maybe then we'll start seeing that, because you kind of tell me that our current recruitment, we're just thinking when we got promoted, oh hell, we need to sign these players, and we managed to sign all these players who have automatically made us a massively much better side. You know what I mean? This was thinking last year, they'd have had like contingency plans of what would happen if we did go up, what would happen if we stayed down, and all that stuff, and that's what they paid for. So us signing Granit Xhaka wasn't by an accident. Us signing Habib Diarra wasn't by an accident. You mentioned Sadiki. It was heavily rumoured last year we were after him. So, these players would have been in mind. And I think the players have got probably January, probably in the summer, are already part of, what was happening last year. Or certainly like early on this season. And I think the Giusolfi stuff, it'll be maybe 1, 2, 3 transfer windows time. But it's, again, when you look at signings, that him there, massive part of what we're doing now. Great signing. We beat off some big clubs for him. He left Roma for us, you know what I mean? Who were in Europe and stuff, it's it can't go unnoticed that. So, but it's again just very exciting.
And Andrew, if you cast your mind back to the summer, John, who's got the handle at interim_PM, which is a good one. John obviously fancies himself a little bit to sort the country out, but he's asking us.
But you're all right, man. You live in Australia.
I didn't say. I didn't say which country needs sorting out. John's asking us to hark back to the summer. He says, "Is there anyone in particular that we were kind of linked with that would have enhanced the squad from where we are now?" And it's hard to kind of remember players who we were linked with back in summer, but I went back through a few things. You've obviously got the goalkeeper was Bulker, who went over to Saudi Arabia, I think. Obviously, the big one that lingered on all summer was Lucimi from Bologna. Jordan Henderson was heavily linked. He had rumours about people like Jamie Vardy, who's just scored in Italy at the weekend, and all that sort of stuff. It's I think that we kept count at Roker Report, and there was more than 100 names linked with the club, and there would have been some that the vast majority, I think, we've probably never heard of, and most of them we'll never hear of again. But is there anybody who you look back and go, it would be nice to get that player in?
It's a good question, that. I mean, I was wondering if Ant had upset you, Martin, because very sensible questions you've put towards him there, but you were asking him to kind of give us the inside knowledge of what our transfer policy was over the summer, and I thought, you must have upset him, Ant, because he's given you all the tricky ones.
Do you remember Balls of Steel back in the day? And there was this. It just literally brought us back to that, where they'd asked like two people really, really easy questions, and this poor dad was getting all the hard ones. And at the end, he goes, "Why am I getting all the hard ones?" And I was literally just about to say that.
You've been stitched up, and then there's Martin putting me in touch with our next Prime Minister. So there's me. I'm doing a lot better. And I tell you what, I hope politicians and prime ministers have got bigger things to worry about than our transfer policy. Sunderland are doing just fine. We don't need any help from the government, I don't think. There are a couple of names that we were linked with, and you wonder now, are they looking on at Sunderland a bit enviously? The keeper that went to Bournemouth, whenever I see him, Petrovic, yeah. To be fair to him, he looks to be playing really well. And in a bizarre way, that kind of gives you even more confidence in our scouting setup, because not only had we targeted Ruth, who's come in and done really well, we also were shopping in a very good market for goalkeepers in general. Lucimi's an odd one, because, he was the big target, the big name, the long chase. But, I mean, that makes you think the club were desperate for him. Well, if he's better than the lads we did sign, if he's better than Aldrete and what have you, then flipping heck, he's going to be some player. I just think anybody that were linked with Sunderland over the summer and didn't come here, or anybody who we have talks with over January, they're going to be looking at Sunderland and thinking we're a real good prospect at the moment. Arsenal, if we can just go back to the Arsenal game, I sounded a bit like Eric Morecambe there when I just shouted Arsenal. So we've had Balls of Steel and now Morecambe and Wise references.
Comedy greats.
Yeah. And it's nice that Sunderland aren't the punchline for once. But Arsenal hadn't even conceded any shots on goal for about 4 or 5 games before playing us. And we went and scored 2 past them and had a couple of other half chances.
Yeah.
Sunderland the team are absolutely fit as a fiddle at the moment. They, again, against Arsenal, the best team in the country, which is becoming a bit of a trademark for Arsenal, because I think I say that after every time I mention them. We were the team that finished stronger. You know, we weren't flagging. You often see teams who were under pressure, like they trail off in the last 15 minutes of a game because they're all knackered. There's none of that. So players who have the potential to come to Sunderland are going to be looking at us and thinking, flipping heck, I must be some player. I must be highly rated if this lot want to sign me. And penny for Lucimi's thoughts, penny for that, was he called Armand Loriente?
Yeah. He was on a theatre medical, wasn't he?
He was. He might now be thinking, I wish I was part of that.
Well, he wanted to be, didn't he? It's,
yeah. So it's a nice feeling to have that players are looking on enviously and wishing they'd come to Sunderland, rather than signing players because they think they're doing us a favour, and they've gone, all right then, how much are you paying us? Yeah, I'll turn up and go through the motions.
Yeah.
Completely different scenario now. And hopefully there's people telling their agents now, pick up the phone, get in touch with Sunderland. Are they interested in me? Could we make something happen? Mm-hmm. Happy days.
And you probably would have been forgiven at the start of the season for people looking at it and thinking, they're going to be fighting for relegation or whatever like that. And this level of player might be thinking, maybe not, maybe next year. But now you're looking at it like people in January, as Andrew said there, for good players who might not be getting much of a game or whatever, thinking, well, hang on, they're doing really well in the Premier League. I've always wanted to play in England. Why not a team like Sunderland? It's just that the fact that we've done so well has opened up this thing for us to get better and better and better. Again, as I say, reminders on 6 months ago, Tommy Watson's goal. It's just mad, isn't it? It's absolutely mad.
It certainly is. I was looking through through some websites to find some of the names of the players who we were linked with during the summer, because a lot of them I had forgotten about. I came across an article that was predicting, it wasn't on Roker Report, I hasten to add, an article predicting what Sunderland's starting 11 would be at the start of the season. I think this was published in July, based on some players. So the predicted starting 11 was Anthony Patterson, Trey Hume, Luke O'Nien, Wilfred Singo, who was a Monaco defender who we were linked with for a lot. He went to Galatasaray.
He did, yeah.
Dennis Serkin said, the article actually said they've been linked with Ronaldo, but it would be unfair to displace Serkin, so he'd been in the team. Kwame Poku, who was at Peterborough and went to QPR. I think he's been injured. Jordan Henderson, who we were, of course, linked with quite a lot. And look, I think if Granit Xhaka hadn't arrived, Henderson would have been a good player to sort of do that role as well. I think he's been exceptionally good for Brentford this season. Dan Neil, Enzo Lefebvre, Wilson Isidore, and Jamie Vardy. I'm just thankful that whoever put the article together isn't in charge of our recruitment, because
the only thing I can remember, like as I said, looking back on it, and I know early on when they mentioned the Henderson stuff, there was the Danny Welbeck rumour, wasn't there? And I actually said, when I went on Sky Sports News, I said, sorry, I'm not name dropping, but I said I think that would make a lot of sense. And you look what he's done this season for Brighton, he's scoring goals, people who had about getting back in the England team. I think that would have been a really, really good signing. But you look at how much Brighton value him, because Brighton is still playing him. That's probably the only one where I'm looking at thinking, I can see Danny Welbeck in this team. The rest, I'm like, whatever. Like, the second one probably wasn't his fault, was it? Because I think Bologna were playing footy buggers. And as I mentioned, Loriente would have come if it hadn't been for something they found in his medical. But for anything else, for anyone who's looked up and turned the nose up on us, right, sod you then. You know what I mean? Because we're going to be looking at a better player than you.
No, there's another one which was more realistic. So again, we're kind of dragging this out now, but it's fun to look back on. So the other predicted lineup that friend of the pod James Copley did over on the Echo website was goalkeeper Lemons, who went to Manchester United. Obviously he would be a great addition. Ronaldo, obviously, I think we'd signed him by that point. Singo again was in that predicted lineup alongside Lusumi, which of course both of those defenders we did go in for. In midfield, at centre back as well, it was Charlie Cresswell, who we were linked with from Toulouse for quite a while, but he didn't arrive, obviously. Habib Diarra, who had arrived at the club by that point, and Noah Sadiki, who had arrived at the club by that point. Lefebvre was obviously already there, and you move into the attacking positions, and you've got the French lad, Evan Gessend from Nice, who we were linked with for quite a while. Matthias Ablein from Nantes, who also we were linked with for a bit. And Loriente, as we were discussing, from Sassuolo. So there's good few players there, but it's interesting when you look back, so you kind of remember these names cropping up, but you forget about them as soon as the transfer business is over.
I bet the pronunciation police would have had a field day with that lineup.
Oh, cool! I tell you what. Do you want another difficult question?
Oh no! My brain's as frazzled as Gabrielle's was on Saturday now.
On the pronunciation thing, I listened back to the Sunderland game on BBC Sounds against Arsenal. Apparently, it's pronounced Hair Truda. I've been calling him Gertruder throughout. You know.
And I can remember, I'm sure it was Gav who laughed at me for calling him Gertrude, because it is how that's pronounced, because it's French, isn't it? So
right,
right. Yeah. But I'm sure that was one amongst a lot of them. And to be fair, a few of them I have probably been deserving of. I was calling, Ronaldo, I think, for 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I can say I'm dreadful with names, but yeah. Well, but did you see as well, though, the commentator was calling Eze, which is just an easy one, isn't it? EZE. He was calling him Eze.
Oh, right.
Well, the defender who we were talking about, because he's Dutch, isn't he? Gertrude.
Yes.
But I took my pronunciation of Gertrude from Nick Barnes when he was on the podcast. I waited for him to say it first. I thought Nick will know. Now I've copied Nick Barnes, so I'll blame Nick for that.
Martin, you mentioned Gesond there, or maybe Hessond, might be pronounced Hessond. Didn't he end up at a Premier League club? I'm sure he came on against us for somebody. Does that name ring a bell with you?
What's his full name?
Evan Gesond, Aston Villa.
Aston Villa. So again, that just shows the level of player we were going for. None of the players we were linked with have ended up going to a Mickey Mouse team or are now playing in a team who are at the bottom of the Premier League. Aston Villa are starting to pick up form. I believe they're in the top half of the table. They've been doing well recently. So yeah, we were identifying players who were desirable and who other competitive clubs wanted. Not every transfer is going to pay off or come off, but it at least shows that Sunderland are looking in the right areas and trying to get a high quality of player in.
Look, I think where we're punching in terms of recruitment is with the best around, isn't it? Really, we're setting our sights really high, and there was I think Mark Douglas did a piece, didn't he, last week, and there was a comment from another Premier League recruitment side, and they were saying they were talking to agents about a certain player who was attracting interest from Champions League clubs, all this sort of stuff, and they were saying really interesting conversations from Champions League clubs. The conversation in England that was most interesting was with Sunderland. So you're having these conversations with these players who you maybe previously have thought there's no chance of getting them, but we're having the conversations and word gets around. And like we said before, Xhaka signing changes everything in terms of the perception of the club. And I think going back to stuff that we talked about on the pod the other day, that belief that the crowd has, all that sort of stuff, it comes from having somebody like Xhaka who go, well, if he believes, I'm going to believe. It's completely different to, trying to believe some other players like James Vaughan or people like that we talked about previously. It's like when Roy Keane came. Like, if Roy Keane says Sunderland's a great club and we should be doing this and that and the other, I'm going to bloody believe him and stick in it. So there's an awful lot to be said for that. And I think that word going back to the point, that word gets around football, and all of a sudden you go players going, gosh, I wouldn't mind getting involved in that. Look at the atmosphere on Saturday. Look at how the ground felt. Look at all the things that are going on. And we talked again yesterday about the things off the field that the club are getting right. And they're the things that are visible to us as supporters. Shirts being in the club shop, ticketing system working, displays happening well, all that sort of stuff, club support and that sort of thing. All of the stuff that we don't see, how well are the players looked after, how are the arrangements, how are all those things going. We'll never be privy to that. But you can bet your bottom dollar if the things in the club shop were crap a few seasons ago, the things looking after the players who were here wouldn't have been absolutely stellar, would they? So
yeah,
all of that just kind of, it all, as I said, it kind of comes together and it all forms a proper club.
And you know what, as well, a very, very, well, I say not a small thing, but, a thing that you really noticed this year, and I think Andrew will agree, the stadium itself just looks so much nicer because they've like jet washed, deep cleaned it, haven't they? And I've added new panels and stuff. It looks newer, and it's small things, but it's small things that they were getting wrong so many years ago. And I was like, always remember the Stuart Donald quote about they were spending 350 quid on plant pots or something, wasn't it? And all that kind of stuff was just, and then, your speech is there now, Matt. You make me want to walk out here 8 foot tall. I'm just going to be like, at work today, I'm going to be flying high. But you're right, though, and that's the thing where we're, again, I said on the last podcast we did, we're all of, similar age where we're just used to things being shit. You know what I mean? And it goes into it gets into your system a little bit, doesn't it? I support Sunderland, this, that, and the other. Now when you go out, people are like, what team do you support? I support Sunderland. Oh, they're doing really well, aren't they? Yeah, we've got a Xhaka. Yeah, I know. You're like, I know. it's like, mint, and people like to say people are happy for us and stuff like that. Like I've got, like my mate who's an Arsenal fan, he messaged me on Saturday saying, best team we'll play this season. And that's, from, and that's like coming from, like say just friends of mine, everything like that, but it's also coming from people in the media who you wouldn't have expected from. On Saturday, again, he had to talk about him, but the fact Alan Shearer was defending Dan Ballard over something completely stupid what Theo Walcott said, but the fact that that's even started to turn, and people are noticing us now. And as you said there, it's because the club are just getting so many things, and it might be little things to people on the outside looking in, like all the shirts in this. But we were at the point where it wasn't happening. We were at a point where, you're having to like, where my tickets are. I remember going to a game a couple of years ago where the tickets came down on the team bus. And someone ran across from the team bus, hid the tickets into the ticket dispenser. I think it was Chef went away. And, like just stuff like that, which has just changed in the last 2 or 3 years. And the sky's the limit, really. And yeah, like I say, mate, that was bang on what you've said there.
Excellent. Well, I think that is an exceptionally good place to leave us. So thank you to Andrew for your answers and wisdom today, mate.
Well, thank you for saying wisdom. That's very nice. But honestly, these chats we're having at the moment are just brilliant. I love listening to yourselves. You've both made excellent points, but they're all positive points as well. And I just, long may it continue, and however, lads. Brilliant.
And thank you, Tant, as well, for answering all of the difficult questions there.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next one when you ask. It's every time you say it, who do you want to buy in January? It's tough for me, but yeah, I mean, thanks, and obviously thanks to everyone who put the questions in, because we love doing it, don't we? I mean, like I said before, like me and obviously Martin lives in Australia. It's a lovely time for him. Me and Andrew are getting up at 6:30 in the morning to chat about football, to chat about Sunderland. And we're loving doing it, you know what I mean? We've both got go work now. It's just class, absolute class. So,
no, it certainly is. And if you have any questions that you'd like me or Andrew or Ant to answer next week, drop us an email at howaythepodcastsafc@gmail.com and make them especially difficult for Ant. He loves to talk about who we're going to sign in January. So if you want any recommendations on Ivorian left backs next week, please.
If anyone wants to donate this season's football manager, please slide into me DMs. I'm more than happy to do some research.
I think not just January. I want Ant to tell us next time who we're going to sign in 3 years' time. Who are the players coming up through the ranks that are going to join us?
That's right. Well, you can join us next week for Ant's deep dive into the summer transfer window of 2027. But until then, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like If You Know Your History with me, Johnny Owen.
And with me, Mark Webster. And it's not just any other football pod. We go beyond the goals to uncover the untold stories, the hidden histories, and the cultural moments that shaped the game we love.
Search If You Know Your History and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.